Hello, welcome to another edition of Hinds Sight. I am David Hinds. Today I want to talk about two things. I want to talk about political tactics and strategy, and I want to talk also about government of national unity. Uh, One of the things that I've been concerned about and I have written about is the need for um, effective political strategy and political tactics as one move forward dealing with the impasse in Guyana. In my most recent letter to the media, I made the point that if the president, and when, not if, when the president of Guyana decides to reopen the parliament, under pressure, of course, from the opposition, from the people of Guyana, when he decides to do that, the opposition, meaning the AFC and the APNU, have to work out what is it they want out of a post-prorogue parliament. Of course, the president has the other option, which is to dissolve the parliament, and that would mean that the country would have to go to election within 3 months. But it's very clear that had the PPP wanted to go to an election, they would not have moved towards proroguing the parliament. They would have dissolved the parliament and go straight to elections. Obviously, proroguing the parliament, part of their strategy is to delay election. So they are not, I think, eager to go to a new election. So let's argue that they reopen the parliament. Then what next? My own argument is that that should present an opportunity for the opposition to enter into negotiations with the PPP, not dialogue, which means you sit down and you talk, and then after then you wait until another dialogue. No, to negotiate with the PPP. Obviously, the PPP does not want to go to an early election. It also doesn't want to be thrown out of office via a no confidence vote. And so, therefore, I think that opens the door for a negotiation. Now, it means that the opposition have to have something concrete on the table. What we are hearing thus far from the Alliance for Change, the AFC, is that they would put the no confidence vote back on the table. They would go through the no confidence vote. And if they go through with it and it's passed, it means that we go to elections. Now, the PPP, rather than allow itself to be humiliated in that way, it's better. And they, I'm sure, will take the option of dissolving the parliament rather than going through the humiliation of going to a no confidence vote. So it seems to me, from a tactical standpoint, that the opposition ought to think about an alternative to the no confidence vote and the dissolving of parliament and going to new elections. So after all, we have 2 more years. Now, one of the reasons that I am opposed to going to elections is not that I feel that elections are not important. Obviously, elections are important. They are the epitome of democratic practice. But I'm arguing that early elections could bring you 3 possibilities. And let's look at those 3 possibilities. I think the most likely result of a new election would be the same situation that we have now, whereby the PPP wins a plurality of the vote and therefore gets the presidency, and the combined opposition win a majority in parliament and then hold control of the parliament. That's what we have now, divided government, where the 2 parties hold the parliament and the other party holds the executive. And so, therefore, you would be going back to just where you are in an early election. It doesn't make sense. The second possibility is the PPP regaining its majority in parliament. And that would mean the PPP having a majority in parliament plus the presidency, which would take us to pre-2011, which would then defeat the purpose of the no confidence vote, because you're not bringing down a minority government so that you can then replace it with a majority government of the same party. That's really nonsense. The third possibility is, of course, either the APNU or the AFC winning the presidency plus a majority of the vote. That is a long shot, the least of the possibilities. Of course, if the AFC and APNU were to come together and in a pre-election arrangement, it means that the possibility of them winning both the presidency and the parliament increases. But for tactical reasons, we know that the AFC is not going to go down that road, and I think they're correct. I'm not so sure that a joint pre-election alliance with the AFC and the APNU will yield a majority result, because I am not sure that those Indian Guyanese who would vote for the AFC as a separate entity would vote for the AFC if it is an alliance, in an alliance with the PNC and the APNU. So that's where we are in terms of possibilities. It then doesn't, for me, make tactical sense to go to an early election to get the same result that you have now, and then come to the same kind of impasse that you have now, which is you have divided government, and it means, therefore, that neither side is giving in, and so you have this impasse with one side saying, I am going to bring you down via a no confidence vote, and the other side is saying, okay, I am going to use the power of the presidency to stave that off. That's where we are with divided government. It doesn't have to be like that, because divided government could lead to a unity government, a national government. That is the recognition on the part of both sides that neither of us has won everything, and so therefore we share the governance of the country in a government of national unity. I argue, many of us have argued, that this should have been where they should have gone after the 2011 election results. They have not gone there, and the alternative to that is what we have now. So I am arguing here, as I've done before, is that in order for Guyana to win, in order for Guyana to survive, in order for us to make sense of the mandate that we get from the people, is that we work towards a national government. That, I think, is a better solution than proroguing the parliament or bringing down the government via a no confidence vote. A joint government. As we have said, any government in which the PPP does not participate is not a representative government. And any government that the PNC slash APNU and now the AFC are not involved is not a representative government. And a truly representative government would be a national unity government. Now, some people have taken me to task and have asked, well, why are you calling for a national government when the PPP will not accept a national government? But I am not too sure that that is an effective political answer. In 1990, when the WPA proposed to the PCD then that they should approach the PNC to set up an interim power sharing or national government that I'm proposing now, the PPP said the PNC will never agree to that. Alas, when the WPA went and met with the PNC said, yes, we are ready. We will be part of that. All right? So I don't think that that argument that the PPP will not agree to national government is enough not to explore the possibility of a national government. If you go in and you say, here is what we want, and this is what is important, a government of national unity has not been put on the table formally as a proposal on the part of the opposition. Until you put that formally on the table and the PPP kicks it off the table, then you can make the argument that the PPP has not conceded that they need to form a national government. So I do think that the whole notion of the national government has to be formally put on the table. I am saying that if it comes down to negotiation, as the PPP is indicating that it's ready to negotiate, and the opposition is quite correct to say we are not going to negotiate until Parliament is reopened. Once the Parliament is reopened and the PPP is ready to negotiate, you must put things on the table. And one of the things you must put on the table is something that brings to you and your supporters something very concrete. Now, we're talking about constitutional reform because one of the reasons we are where we are, where a minority executive government could prorogue the parliament, it is because we have constitutional instruments that are not in line with the ethnic and political realities of the country. And everyone is saying that we need constitutional reform to bring the Constitution into line and to level the political playing field so that a representative government can be in place. Now, if we had a different constitution, David Granger would have been the president today, and we would have had a government led by the parliamentary opposition, and it would have been up to them to invite the PPP to join that government, and both of them said that they would have done that. They would have invited the PPP to join the national government if the constitution were different. No, so if you're going to get constitutional reform, you have to have the PPP on board to get constitutional reform. And you are not going to get that constitutional reform if you do not have a situation where all the parties come together and to agree that there is need for constitutional reform. There is the argument that, look, the PPP is so terrible that one has to get rid of them in order to institute a government of national unity. Now, there is something a little bit crooked with that kind of argument. You're saying the PPP is a domineering party. You're saying that they're a party that is authoritarian. You're saying that they are a party that likes to exclude people. And you're saying, look, we are first of all going to try to win all and then include the PPP. Now, we're against the PPP because they are for winner-take-all. So we're saying the way you deal with winner-take-all is to winner-take-all, win and take all yourself. And then it's up to you to invite the PPP. I don't think that that is the correct approach. I think the approach should be that we are at a point where negotiations are very, very possible. And then that we should put this proposal of a unity government on the table and let us negotiate. Let us negotiate it. Put the PPP on the spot. Let them enter into a dialogue and then get into that dialogue, get into the negotiation, not dialogue. Enter into negotiation, then come out of the negotiation saying, we don't want shared government. What we want is to negotiate a government of the PPP alone. You put them on that spot. Look, at the end of the day, Guyana is not going to move forward without a government or a national government. I hesitate because it doesn't have to be a government of national unity, in the sense that you don't have to have unity to have a joint government. That is, you have a joint government based on the representation of the people, based on the proportional representation of the people, and you agree to a program going forward. You agree to a national program. Now we know what the national program is. We need a constitutional reform. We need local government elections. We need reform of government to decrease corruption in government, which is rampant. We need to deal with the question of poverty. We need to deal with the question of workers' rights. We need to deal with the question of education. We need to deal with the question of healthcare. These are very, very straightforward things that can be part of an agreed program among the political parties. And of course, there will be disagreement on tactics. Well, within the cabinet of the PPP, I'm sure there is a disagreement on tactics. Within the PNC and the AFC, there are disagreements on tactics. So if you were to have a national government and there are disagreement on tactics, that would be quite normal. So those of you out there who are saying that the PPP will not agree to national government, I'm saying that you don't know something until you work that thing, until you put that thing to the test. We are at a critical period in the country's history, and it calls for bold, innovative, and patriotic leadership. And the most patriotic thing to do now is to relieve the people of the stress and the anxiety that is brought about by this jockeying for power. I do not think elections are always the answer to a problem. Elections are perhaps the simplest thing that you can come up with to deal with a problem. I think this leads more than just going to the polls and going through that excitement for the sake of going through it. I think that we can be creative, we can be thoughtful, we can look at the politics of our country and ask ourselves what the end game is. Is the end game the survival of the PPP, APNU, or AFC? Or is it the survival of our country? History has dealt us this hand that we have. History has dealt us the ethnic rivalry that we have. History has dealt us the kind of dog-in politics, the kind of zero-sum politics that we've been accustomed to. But the elections of 2011 gave us an opening. Let us return there and use that opening. I think we all, for the last 60 years, 70 years, have been talking that the most ideal thing would be if people do not vote according to race. Well, there's nothing we can do about that. Now, people are voting, have voted along racial lines. And so it is how we use the people's mandate, how creatively we use it. I think the closest we could get is where we got in 2011. So now I think is the time to be very, very tactical, the time to be very patriotic, and now is the time for the opposition, AFC and the APNU, to formally put the government of national unity on the table and made that the center point of any negotiations with the PPP. Until the next time, this is David Hinds thanking you for tuning in to yet another edition of Hinds Sight. Remember, you can catch my other commentaries on my YouTube. On YouTube, it's Hinds Sight. You can catch my other commentaries on my website at Guyana-Caribbean politics.com. See you next time.